Hi, everyone. It's Heather Crocio again from Wellness Matters. I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Leanne Benedict, and she is going to talk to us about a little bit of a career change that she decided to get into in health and wellness, but applying it into the education system. And then I wanted to switch some gears with her and talk about all things meditation. So, Leanne, thank you for coming today.
You are so welcome. It's really exciting to
Yeah.
connect with you on this topic.
Yes, thank you. So, um, I actually, it's a funny story. I reached out to Leanne, not realizing who it was that I was emailing because she had a different last name, but I had emailed her a week or two ago and asked her if she wouldn't mind doing a podcast with me on meditation. She said, "Oh my gosh, is this Heather Carocchio, my daughter's kindergarten teacher?" And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, it is." So we actually had met and known each other 16 years ago. And then I moved away from where I was teaching. And now the universe has brought us back together. And so now we're going to talk about some wellness things. So, I mean, it was just crazy how this all happened.
I know. Yeah, I kind of chuckled too when I saw your name.
I
I'm like,
know.
oh my gosh.
I've
But
told so many people about it, and they were like, "No way, that is crazy. You have got to do a podcast now with her."
yes, it's meant to be.
I know. So, my first question I was going to ask you is, how did you get into the health and wellness world? Like, about when did you make this shift? You said you were doing
Well,
Common Core at BOCES, and then,
yeah, so I mean, it's always been important to me on a personal level. So it was kind of, it was always this separate thing. I had this kind of value and something that was important to me. And then I had my work. And as a staff developer in the world of education, obviously it's generally a focus on curriculum and instruction in that kind of role. And that was my job doing Common Core and particularly a focus on literacy in my role. And it, while I loved the work and I loved my job at the time, it just began to feel like I couldn't continue to do that kind of work forever. Something was feeling like a mismatch for me. And I began to just explore what is this mindfulness and education stuff, and how might I begin to bring it in to the work that I'm doing. So in small ways, I would plant the seed, like in my literacy network, we would talk about mindfulness, and so I was doing it in small ways. And then after a severe injury, I was kind of already at this point where like something's got to give here.
yeah.
I had a severe injury that took me out of work for 8 weeks. And during those 8 weeks, I really, really sat with, all right, what is my work moving forward? And that's when I was like, you know what, I'm going to come out of this and I'm just going to start doing this work. I'm going to start talking about mindfulness and why it's so important. I had already seen how it could transform personal relationships because it did with my daughter and I as a parent. I really noticed how my own mindfulness practice and meditation practice allowed me to show up differently for my children, particularly my daughter at the time.
I'm so glad
So
you're bringing
why
that up because I think it's so important to realize that when you're working on yourself as a parent, it's going to trickle down and help your kids as well. And so I think that was so amazing because you had said that you and your daughter were struggling a little bit. And then,
yeah.
yeah, continue. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make that
Yeah,
side
no,
note.
it's good. Pause and like make those connections
Yeah.
because I could ramble on and on about this.
Me too.
But yeah, so it really, I saw how it could transform and it literally did transform our household. So then I was like, you know what, if we could do this in classrooms with students,
Yeah.
how powerful could this be? And if we could do it like with each other as adults,
Right. Right.
So yeah, and so it really grew from there. People were interested. I did an overview session and I'm like, if 10 people show up, I'll be thankful. And 50 people showed up. So was like, okay, people want this. So
Like parents or staff?
this was educators, teachers,
Oh,
and this was
wow.
after the school day. So they came after hours to learn. And I was like, okay, people want this. So that just progressed. So over the last 4 years, it turned into my primary work, still doing professional development, but my primary focus is on mindfulness, social emotional learning, and then a lot of work on resilience and self-care for adults. So I touch kids and adults with this work now. Just pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is so amazing and
Yes,
rewarding. Do
very
you
much so.
do like a class for teachers and then one for students or to combined, or how does that work?
Yeah, so anytime that I have done work with students, where literally going into classrooms, pushing into classrooms and doing a mindfulness lesson, some kind of activity with kids, it's always with this lens and intention of modeling for the adults in the classroom
Yeah.
so that they are seeing how to do it. They're
Yeah.
hearing the language of how to lead an activity like this that focuses on self awareness, for example, and self management, and identifying emotions, for example, and how each of these skills then can help lead us to have those kinds of conversations. So I got to experiment with kids to see what activities, what types of strategies worked with different populations, different ages, and teachers got to see it modeled in action and participate
Right.
in those kinds of activities. And it didn't, some things failed, some things that I thought would work didn't, and vice versa. Some things I was like, oh, I'm not sure if this is going to work, did. So it really gave insight into what works with different students. I worked with middle school boys, primarily boys, it wasn't all boys, but primarily boys who were in one of our behavioral programs. They loved art, they loved mindfulness based art, and they loved making um, bead bracelets. I never would have
Really?
guessed, right? So they were like, can we make those bracelets again? And like they loved making bracelets. Never would have predicted it. So I would then tell teachers, don't make assumptions. Be
Right.
open
Right.
to what they might need and what they might respond to. I had one boy who didn't respond to anything I did until I did Zen Tangles, which is a drawing of kind of patterns, repeating patterns. And for him, that was the hook. So it was really interesting to gain the insight of all the possibilities, because sometimes people think it's just focusing on my breath where I'm sitting still.
Right.
And that was not it at all. There's just so many ways to be present
Right.
with whatever you're doing, right? And so that was really rewarding to see um, students respond to certain things when they didn't respond to other things, and then to find the hook or the thing that would allow them to finally be like, oh, I can sit here for 10 minutes, listen to some soothing music, and draw or do a Zen tangle, and that brings some stillness to my body. What
Yeah.
great insight for them, but great insight for teachers too.
Right. And they could develop a new hobby that they didn't even realize was available or something that they would even like.
Right, right.
Wow. Like you,
Such cool stuff.
we had mentioned before I even started recording that the senses play a big role in being present.
Yeah,
I remember reading somewhere like a good idea, like if you're having like a panic attack at the time, like one trick is to look at something that's around you
yeah,
and notice every little detail about that one thing. Like if you had a soda can in front of you and then just look at the different letters on it and the colors and try to focus on that soda can just enough for your brain to stop being in the hyperdrive
yeah,
mode. And
yeah,
you had mentioned a really good activity with an ice cube that I never would have even thought of. So
yeah. Anything you can, using your senses, as I
mm-hmm.
was saying, when we get caught up in those kind of mental stories or mental hamster wheels,
Yeah.
right? We're usually thinking past or future, right? And so Future thinking tends to be more the inducing.
Right.
Past thinking tends to be more like depressive thinking.
Right. Right.
So either way, we can note it creates sensations in our body. And so we can, when we start to be aware of like, oh, like I'm feeling that tightness in my chest, I'm feeling like shortness of breath, using our senses, because anything we take in through our senses is happening right now in this moment. And that can, right, nothing's a silver bullet, but that can bring us out of the thinking, that wheel, getting caught in that wheel of thinking, and pull us into the present moment.
Right.
So visually, that's a great strategy. Like look around you, just even to look around in the room you're in and notice things, little details.
Right.
Or like you said, a soda can.
Yeah.
My go-to is sound. So I'll just pause and notice sounds in the space.
That's amazing too. Yeah.
But sensation, like I talked about that ice cube activity, or like just like right now, you could pause and say, and anyone listening could do this right now, literally pause and notice. Can you feel temperature of the room? Is there any parts of your body that feel colder or warmer right now? Are you experiencing both cold and warm at the same time in different parts of your body?
Well, I'm sorry. I like too where if you are in the middle of like panic of any kind, stopping and trying to give your brain something else to focus on. But then there's another step to that I think is so helpful, and that is try to figure out in that moment what the trigger was that caused that. So by taking a step back and slowing down and relaxing a little bit and say, oh my goodness, this panic or whatever just came about. Just before that, I just had an altercation with so and so. You know what I mean? And
right.
You know what I mean? And find it.
That like idea of, first of all, we have to settle the nervous system, right? We have to bring some calm and soothing, right? Then the next layer is what you're mentioning is, and I like to use this question because I'll do it with my kids. Like, what's the story you were telling yourself?
Right.
There was some kind of story, there was some kind of thing that happened, and then you created an interpretation of it.
Right.
What was that story? Then you can get curious.
Right.
So like I like to summarize mindfulness as noticing with curiosity. Right? So you can notice what's happening and then get curious and inquire and ask yourself some questions. So noticing with curiosity is just a great way to capture that and summarize that.
Then it's just becomes so much easier to figure out what your triggers are, maybe ways to avoid them for next time, or ways to overcome it, and then, in different ways of coping with it and handling it.
Right.
So I'm so kind of envious of what you're doing right now, because it sounds like so much, there's trial and error, but like you get to really experiment and see like nothing's an absolute no or yes. So you get to stretch things to the limit to kind of see what, people can attach to. I think that that's so cool.
Yeah, and it definitely, and the other thing is you're talking, I think is important to point out, like when I think about the work that I do with students, I don't think I would have been as effective in doing it with students if I wasn't doing that work myself.
Right.
It starts kind of doing that your own inner work so that you can try things on and get a sense of it. It's like, you wouldn't teach someone how to ride a bike if you hadn't ridden a bike before. You just wouldn't have that sense of
knowledge,
right, of what it's like.
Yeah.
So it's that same idea with this for sure.
Yeah.
In fact, a lot of the work and a lot of the, the trainings out there on mindfulness in education, their primary message is it does start with you, and even if you did nothing else but practice yourself, that in itself is an intervention for students because you show up more grounded and regulated.
Right.
And therefore, that's the person the students get in the classroom is a grounded, regulated teacher.
Well,
same for parents.
Well, I think that, like you said, you're practicing at home, And even if you're not a teacher, that's fine. If you're a parent, now you're teaching your children and
Yes,
you're showing up differently for your children. Or if you don't have children and you have a significant other, you're showing up differently to that relationship.
absolutely.
And so everyone's life that is around you is affected in a positive way, including your own.
Right.
So everyone could benefit from doing these types of, mindful practices at home and doing some research on things that interest you, which is what is going to segue me into what I'd like to discuss with you next is you have just finished a 2-year course on meditation. So my first question is basically where did you go to do this class and how intensive was it? I guess.
Yeah, so it was a 2-year program that was to be certified as a mindfulness meditation teacher. And so the two lead teachers are Tara Brock and Jack Wardfield, which these are names people might be familiar with.
Right.
Um, and the course was organized through Sounds True, which is a website that offers courses and podcasts and all things really like meditation, spirituality, just wellness,
Yeah.
such a range of offerings. There was a prerequisite course that they also offer through Sounds True called The Power of Awareness, which was a 7-week online course. I recommend that. It's just a great introduction.
Yeah.
Tara Brack and Jack Cornfield also offer a free course called 40 Days, or it's called Mindfulness Daily. It's like 40 days, and it's like a 5 to 10 minute lesson a day. That's an amazing introduction into this work because it's brief, it's free,
Yeah.
and it's basic. So through Sounds True, and then it was a pretty intensive course for 2 years, which involved working with a small group and a mentor, weekly modules, monthly calls with your peer group, monthly calls with your mentor, and then practicing leading talks and guided meditations throughout the program, and then having to do a practicum essentially on teaching a class and documenting it,
Wow.
submitting that work in, doing it, in a final exam. And so it was a pretty intensive program, but I learned so much and deepened my own practice. Um,
And
so it was pretty
you
powerful.
just finished that this weekend, didn't you?
Yes, just graduated.
Congratulations. Yay. That's
Thank
so
you.
fun. So eventually you would like to lead a meditation class for others?
Yeah, and I actually already did that as part of the practicum, so I'll continue to do that and notice, certainly you do it once and you notice all the ways you want to do it better next
Right.
time. So really thinking about, and I keep getting asked by people, like, hey, I know you do this, like, I really want to learn. So doing an intro course, I'll probably begin offering those again now that this program is over. And I do them as like a 6-week, hour and 15-minute long per week session, um, which is just really the basics, how to get started. What is mindfulness and what is meditation? What's the difference? And how do I start? Very basic.
Would
And,
you
and probably eventually going a little bit deeper. People who are more experienced, there's certainly, kind of like the layers of the onion, right? Peeling the onion, you can continue to circle back around and go a little bit deeper and deeper, where once you get the skill of, right, these are the ways I like to practice that work for me, because there's no one way to do it.
right.
This is what works for me. Now, how can I go a little bit deeper and really, and the type of meditation that I was trained in is called Vipassana meditation, which means insight meditation. That as we practice, we gain insights into kind of the nature of things, right? Like we can begin to see how our mind creates stories that aren't necessarily true. We can begin to get insight into how our emotions affect us, and the relationship between emotions and thoughts,
Mhm.
and the ways we create our own angst or suffering because we want things to be a particular way, or we don't like things being a particular way, and then we dwell on that, and then we're miserable,
Right.
right? We do a lot of that to ourselves, right?
Right. Oh, for
But
sure.
yeah, so it's really like the realization of how am I making myself miserable, yet I'm blaming other things or other people.
Right.
But really, this is me because I'm just making up a story about this. So over time, you begin to really understand, like, oh, and then once you realize it, it doesn't hook you as much. Then it's like, I'm actually a little bit happier now because I'm not getting hooked by my stories. So it's really this cool progression of, doesn't mean, like I've had people say, oh, well, you seem angry. I thought you were mindful, you practice mindfulness. It doesn't mean that you don't get angry or you
Right.
don't get triggered. It means that it happens. And then you're like, oh, okay, I see what happens. I can pull myself out of it. I don't have to stay there and dwell on it.
Right.
And we talk a lot about how anger is intelligent. It's just not transformative. We can see it and it's telling us something. Then we can take action in wise ways. So it's really just a cool process.
Yeah, like basically what you're saying with the whole anger thing, you know, to me, it was whatever the situation was, that's a trigger, something happened. And then if you, through meditation, like learning the process of slowing down and like figuring out yourself and, what it is that you are upset about, like going through every emotion that eventually can lead you to creativity or acceptance and all of that, but you have to, it's kind of the process again, you got to feel all those different emotions starting with anger.
Yeah.
So with meditation, for me anyways, it has taught me to slow down and ask myself, what is my hang up here? What is it that I can't process and I might be running from, and
Yeah.
I'll blame something which caused the anger, but really there's something there. Um and meditation, it just, for me, and you hear it over and over again, it makes you slow down and get in touch with yourself. And nowadays, you don't have to slow down. You don't have to get in touch with yourself. It is literally go, 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 go. And to be honest, you probably get more angry and irritated as you're go, 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 going because you're not taking that time to slow down and figure out your emotions and all of that. But for so many people, running is all they know. Keep running,
Right.
keep doing, keep staying busy, do the agendas. And like you were saying, I feel like, well, kind of like the doing, you think you have to make things happen. And realistically, the more I learn with this whole practice with health and wellness, like what will be is going to be, and you can try to move heaven and earth to make the outcome be what you want it to be, and 9 times out of 10 it isn't going to be that. So
Yeah.
if you just
Yeah.
could stop trying to move heaven and earth and just know that it's going to do it on its own at its own pace, like so much stress and anxiety could be wiped
Right.
away.
Well, it's wise action as opposed to frantic action,
Yes, yes.
right? We are conditioned in our society to think, productivity and certain outcomes being a particular way are our measure of worth,
Right,
right? So,
right.
like, we have to work hard in order to be seen as credible or worthy.
Yes,
And it's really just a story
right,
that we've been conditioned to believe.
right.
So that's part of it's like, I don't have to believe that story
No,
anymore. And really, what is it creating in me? It's a sense of, and I speak from experience
me
because
too,
I
me
am
too.
definitely like,
Yes,
you
guilty as
know,
charged,
it
right.
definitely is. So it's redirecting your attention to things that are happening right now. So because people are like, well, really, what is it? What are we doing? Like we're cultivating an awareness through certain skills that we practice, and really we're practicing how to direct our attention in intentional ways on what's happening right now in the moment with kindness and curiosity. Because the other thing we do is we might notice what's happening in the moment, but we are so judgy,
Yes.
right? Particularly towards ourselves. So it's, all right, what's happening? Can I direct my attention to, what's happening right now, or this flower, or this soda can, or
Yeah.
what I'm feeling inside. And then just be kind, like, okay, this is what's here. What's going on?
Right.
What am I noticing? Being curious and inquiring. Now, we still do live in the society we live on, so like this does take time to really delve in, but even in the moment, we can take one deep conscious breath. That's a strategy I teach kids and adults. Like, we could just take one deep conscious breath, and that's enough of a press pause.
Yes.
And that's what I think that's a good starting point. Can I just feel my feet on the floor and take a deep breath? And then that creates enough space to just notice as opposed to react.
Right. Just give yourself that minute or two and not be so reactive, like you said, and just be present with yourself. And it almost sounds too easy and too good to be true. So I feel like a lot of people think that this is like woo wooey, or, why are we even talking about this? That seems crazy. It's slowing me down, whatever. I can't get as much done this way. But the funny, ironic part of it all is when you do this as a daily practice and you do this throughout your day, you will be more productive than you ever thought possible, because you are kind of releasing and going into those creative zones and thinking more clearly, so
Yeah, and there is science to it, right? Because people do think like, oh, I don't need to focus on my breath. I don't need to do that.
yeah.
Well, physiologically, when you are experiencing stress, and here's the thing with stress, we get so comfortable with certain levels of stress, we keep upping our baseline, right? So that it
Yeah.
almost feels like, no, this is how I am all the time. Except that it is a highly elevated level of stress that becomes our new normal.
Right.
Right? And when we are experiencing chronic, even what would be considered tolerable stress, but it's consistently maintained,
Yep.
there's stress hormones being released in our body that impacts our physical health. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So our immune system is impacted by stress and the stress hormones, such as cortisol.
Yep.
It creates inflammation in our body. It damages our heart over time. It ages us. It breaks down the telomeres in our brain. So we could spend a whole other podcast talking
Right.
about all the sciencey stuff. And that information is out there. But just to say, like,
Your metabolism.
yeah, and the parts of your brain you're operating from, when you are on high levels of stress and emotionally activated, you're in your limbic system. You are not operating from the creative, thinking, learning parts
Right.
of your brain. This is why it's hard to focus and get things done, because you can't access the parts of your brain that will allow you to be more effective in your decision making and your creative design and planning. So it helps us in those ways too. Even if you think, well, I'm not going to go sit on a cushion and, say Om with my, in a mudra.
Yeah.
You don't have to, right? You can sit on your front porch and just, for 5 minutes, just be still, notice the sound of the birds, feel the warmth of the sun, slow down your breathing. It's a walk in nature where you're really paying attention, not caught up in your head.
Right.
You can be washing dishes.
Yeah.
And notice the temperature of the water. Literally, we can do this anytime, anywhere.
Right.
And it can really reduce those levels of stress.
I know I watch people and I think, oh, yay. Like I'll see people going for a walk and I'm thinking, oh, yay, they're doing some type of self-care for themselves. But then I see them with their phone in their hand and they're texting and they're walking and all that. And I'm thinking, you're totally negating that wonderful process of trying to slow down. And again, you're just trying to multitask, get too many things done all at one time. And it's just like an epidemic, for people, is just to be crazy zooming. And then when you actually do have 5 minutes to yourself and you think, oh my gosh, I can breathe again, then all of a sudden you don't know how to even sit with yourself because holy cow, I have 5 minutes to myself and I'm not going crazy. And it's such a vicious cycle.
Yes.
And there's really, I think the beginning parts of meditation or slowing down, deep breathing and all that, I think when people are resisting it because they're afraid of it. They don't want to actually do that initial, you know, rip the band-aid off and just try it. Because it's
Yes.
terrifying to actually be present with yourself and actually hear things that your intuition is telling you. Like maybe it is you're not in the right job or in the right relationship or surrounding yourself with the right people, and that's terrifying. You know,
Right. We
how
don't want to find out
you
sometimes
don't want to
or
find
realize.
out. It's just easier to keep your, head in the sand or going crazy, but eventually it catches up with you. You either wind up with a colossal panic attack or, some type of dis-ease going on inside your body. But rather than get to that level, let's just figure out a way to incorporate some nice, tranquil daily practices. And
Right.
how, like, do you meditate every day? And if so, like, how often?
So my practice ebbs and flows, and I used to kind of judge myself for that. But I realized that, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a what I call a formal practice and an informal practice. And certain times my informal practice is more prevalent.
Yeah.
And what I mean by informal is I'm going through my day, about my day, and I'm taking time to just stop and just stand and look around and just breathe,
Yep.
or to be notice sounds, to recognize when I have an emotion come up, somebody says something to me and I'm like, ooh, I urge,
Yep.
feel that urge to respond,
Yep.
to act out, to, do something ineffective. I pause. So that's kind of this cultivating this way of being over time with practice that I'm able to like throughout my day just be a little more aware.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say is an informal practice, or when I'm washing the dishes, I'm really kind of in the experience. Then, which is really, we want to be that way, right?
Yeah.
Because we could sit on a cushion and have a formal practice, which I also have. Typically, when I'm being very consistent with my formal practice, which I always do in the morning, anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes
Wow.
of sitting
Yeah.
on the cushion or in a chair, engaging in a formal practice, which I always do. It's a progression for me, and everyone approaches it differently. But I
Right.
start with very much connecting with my body, feeling my body, what's my intention for the day, and then opening up to just awareness of just being spacious, just being still, just being connected to what's happening, whatever arises. So a
Can
more formal practice.
can somebody do a meditation lying down?
Oh yes.
Okay.
So lying down, sitting, standing. Standing, I don't do it often enough, but standing meditation, which is great because you're standing in line like at Walmart.
Yeah.
You do standing meditation, right?
Yeah.
And I love it because when I can feel my feet on the floor and really feel like from my feet all the way up to my shoulders, I kind of work my way up and just feel my body in the moment. Takes a minute or two and then just a few deep breaths. That's a meditation. I think people think, well, I don't have time. Literally,
Right.
60 seconds.
It's awareness. So, like, I just did one last night, and a lot of them, like, I do a lot of guided ones where somebody's explaining to me what to do, which you can find easily on YouTube anywhere.
Yeah.
It'll just say, like, as your eyes are closed, visualize like your lower abdominal area, like your stomach area, breathing in and out. So now my eyes are closed, but my brain is like thinking of that area, and
Yeah.
that's all you need to do. Literally,
Yeah.
is think of the air. You think of your stomach going up and down and breathing, having those full belly breaths versus the shallow, and that's a meditation right there.
It is.
You're being
Because
aware.
yeah. all it is a directing of your attention.
Right.
That's what we're doing. We're directing our attention as opposed to our attention just being like random all
Ugh,
over the place, darting
racing.
about.
Yeah.
We're intentionally directing our attention on something. It's what we would call a concentration practice, right? We're concentrating on the sensation of our belly breathing,
Yeah.
right? And it's interesting because you talk about thinking about your belly breathing, and there is this like, yep, I'm bringing my attention there, but it's also then feeling the sensation of your belly breathing and up and down.
Yeah.
So the sense of the sensation of it and feeling it in your body, because and doing that kind of body connecting is an important practice because we are so disassociated and disconnected from our body.
Right. Like,
And yeah,
there's certain areas in your body, like sometimes my knee gets a little sore and acts up. So if
yeah,
I do a meditation where I'll do a body scan. Where in my body do I feel like shaky or, not my best self? And then that's where I would put my focus on.
yeah,
I wouldn't say I'm any type of meditative guru or anything like that, but the small amounts of meditating that I have been doing within the last year, I know have made me a more stable, stronger, understanding person. And, you know, I would like to incorporate even more of it into my life, so I could only imagine where the benefits will, take me.
yeah.
But for the listener, is there like, I guess there isn't any one size fits all, but do you have any tips on how somebody would, get started on this? And maybe it is just standing in line at Walmart and being aware of your body, but
Yeah, I would say two go-to practices, and I like to call them like back pocket practices because you can do them anywhere with very little effort and whatever you have with you. So there's one practice I always teach people that I call 2 feet, one breath. And it's literally wherever you are, and you can be seated, you could be standing. It's to just pause and feel your feet on the floor. Like anyone could do it right now who's listening, wherever you are. Just bring your awareness down to your feet and feel like the sensations of your feet touching, making contact with the floor, whether it's socks or shoes or bare feet. You can notice the points of contact, notice temperature, feel that any other sensations, tingling, warmth. And then take one deep, full breath in all the way into your belly, your lower abdomen. And release. And then just allow your breath to go back to being natural and normal. And just creating a little bit of space with 2 feet, one breath is just a simple practice, right?
I know.
It's such a great place to start. Sensation of feet, notice breath. That's it.
It just seems so crazy that it's that simple. Because we breathe to stay alive,
Right.
but I feel like we're doing it wrong most of the time.
Well, and then the second noticing, the second thing to do is really like just with your breath, because you do have to breathe anyway. And for people who think meditation is like, wow, this kind of
Yeah.
out there thing, well, you're already breathing.
Right.
All you're doing is noticing that you're breathing.
Right.
So just a pause and like, because when we're stressed, we breathe high up and shallow, right? Where's my breath? Am I just like rapid? You can even count the number of breaths you take in a minute. Usually when we're stressed and activated, people are taking anywhere from 14 to 20 breaths per minute,
Right.
right? And you can notice, oh, I'm really breathing fast. When you bring your awareness to it and intentionally just slow your breath down to like 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, if you can do that, you can slow your breathing down to 6 or 7 breaths per minute. Just that 1 minute of slowing down your breathing settles your nervous system and gets you out of your head. really, again, we could go into the sciencey stuff, but when we're breathing in that way, we're activating the vagus nerve in our body, which is like putting the brakes on the stress response.
Mm-hmm.
So part of what we're talking about here is really like skills to calming the nervous system. But in doing so, we become a little more aware. We're a little more able to notice. And so that's really the starting point, is to create enough space that we can notice and get curious about what's going on.
Yeah.
And then then we can begin to layer on, because it really is simple,
Mm-hmm.
but can get hard. One of the things one of my meditation teachers has said is like, yeah, you feel, because some people say, oh, I want to do this to feel better, but sometimes I feel sad after I meditate.
Yes.
Because you're feeling everything better, as opposed to numbing or avoiding feeling.
I've cried during
we
it.
Stay busy, or we use alcohol or other things to numb or avoid and stay distracted from what's here. And you mentioned that, like, we don't want to be with what's here.
Right.
So we avoid it in all sorts of ways. And so when we start doing this, what people will sometimes notice, I mean, I spent 2 months crying every morning in my meditation practice.
Yeah.
But it was such a release. And at the end of those 2 months, I was transformed. Right. So that gets it, and that can be scary. So I want anybody to be scared away from this practice, but at the very least, we can begin to settle our nervous system.
Right.
Right now, with what we're experiencing in our world and have been, we're way more activated. Everyone is. I mean, just the numbers of people who are reporting stress and mental health challenges, and how that's on the rise over these past 10 months.
Yeah.
Our systems are activated, and a beginning point is, how can we begin to bring some calm and soothing to our nervous system? Because not only will that benefit us, it will benefit everyone around us. And that's how we can begin to transform this kind of like agitated energy we're in the midst of.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And again, like you had said, meditation doesn't have to be a hour-long practice. I mean, if you can fit it into your day, more power to you. But if you can do small mini meditations throughout the day to equal an hour, I'm not sure what the science is behind that, if it makes a big difference in length of time, but wherever you can fit it in, I say any time's better than no time.
Yeah, absolutely. If people did 3 minutes 3 times a day,
wow,
that could be transformative. That alone.
Yeah.
Right? 3 minutes. That could be in the morning, 3 minutes while you're sipping your coffee, just noticing the smell, the coffee. Like, you can use what you're already doing as part of your routine. Just be present.
Yeah.
Just be aware. Just notice what's happening. That's a starting point, right? So you don't even have to do anything different.
I feel
except be intentional.
I feel like the crying for me, anyways, I'm not sure if you felt this way, but with taking time to notice when you're drinking your coffee and all that, for me, I've gotten so like sad to realize how far away I was from my own self. And so when I'm doing meditation and doing quiet practices, the tears come because I'm coming back to home again. I'm finding myself again. And it's so powerful that I'm just like, I could get choked up thinking about it now. I didn't even realize I felt this way until discussing this with you. But I feel like I'm finding myself again, my carefree self back when I was a young child before life and stress, went crazy, and now I'm a parent myself and all that. So even if you get nothing more out of it than just starting to realize what your desires are again and what you truly find in, like, what's happiness for you, I think that's everything,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like there's a part of you saying, "Oh, there you are again.
Yes, yes.
Like, welcome back.
Yeah. Remember when you used to
I've
do
been
this?
waiting for you."
Yes. That's exactly what it is. It's like a
Yeah,
nice giant hug with yourself.
it is.
Um,
Which is the whole other conversation around self-compassion,
yeah.
which is another huge
Oh,
piece of this that maybe another
we will definitely have to do
conversation.
that because, discussing this right now, I already know like how much I'm being pulled in this direction anyways personally. I feel like everybody has a purpose on this life, in this life and on this planet, and to find yourself and find what gives you joy is the whole purpose of all this. And
Yeah,
when you're in that rat race and going, you are getting farther and farther away from your purpose. And
yeah,
it doesn't have to be that way.
right. When you're doing that, you're serving someone else's
You are.
purpose,
Yeah.
something external to you.
Right. And you
It's,
might have started there, and that might have been what you needed at the time, but we
yep,
are always evolving and,
yep,
finding what is supposed to be next, what's coming next for you. And it changes all the time.
yes.
So I'm going to end our podcast, but Leanne, thank you so much for joining me. And I think we got to do another podcast now.
I think we do too. There's so much more to talk about.
There is. But thank you to all the Wellness Matters listeners. And I hope that you could find something in this podcast useful and you could possibly apply this to your life today. So just remember that wellness matters. Thanks for listening.